Hello and welcome to the Retro Hour, a brand new weekly podcast hosted by me, Dan Wood, and Ravi Abbott.
Hello.
Ravi. How are you doing?
Good.
Now, we're going to be here every week talking about all things retro gaming and technology. And you can get the podcast every week off iTunes, on SoundCloud, and from the website, theretrohour.com. Now, we thought we'd start this podcast up because we've been on YouTube for a couple of years now, haven't we, Ravi?
Yeah, kind of doing Amiga stuff mainly, but also a few general big retro videos as well.
But we thought we'd go back to roots and do a good old-fashioned, old-school audio podcast.
Oh, nothing beats radio.
Now, what we're going to be doing every week is talking about stuff that's kind of retro gaming and retro technology related, but we've looked around. There is quite a lot of retro gaming podcasts. However, most of them have kind of got a bit of an American bias on them, I think.
Yeah, and they kind of tend to be Nintendo. When they're in America, very Nintendo focused.
All NES, isn't it? Yeah. So we thought we'd do this podcast with a bit more of a European and, in particular, UK slant stuff that was big over here that necessarily wasn't all that big in America. Stuff like the Amiga and the 8-bit home computers as well.
Yeah, the kind of Ataris as well. Even though that was popular in America, there was a bit of a European scene going on.
But we thought we'd start with a topic that I think everyone who's into retro gaming can relate to. Good old Sega.
Yes.
Now, what's all this that's been going on about a Dreamcast 2?
Oh, well, it's recently been Sega Mega Drive's 25th birthday, which is a separate story we can talk about in a minute. But the Dreamcast 2, now there's been recently pictures and renders of this Dreamcast machine that's going to be beautiful with HDMI out and play all of your machines. This is all completely fake. It's made up by Dreamcast fans, but it's gathered so much momentum that Dreamcast 2 was trending on Facebook this week. Yeah,
oh, my word. So why is it suddenly the Dreamcast 2 making the news and why are people talking about this?
I think it's to do with the anniversary of Sega, but I also think it's like the consoles last year, SNES. Everybody was collecting SNES. Everyone was focused on that. I think they're kind of naturally moving on to the next console, which is the Dreamcast.
It is a bit of a tragedy, the Dreamcast, though, because it's a great machine, but obviously it was kind of Sega's, last breath in the console market, wasn't it? And
it was very powerful as well.
Great machine. I mean, we went to a retro gaming show the other week, and the amount of peripherals you can get for the Dreamcast. I got a fishing rod.
A fishing rod? Well, I think they say there's been, 17 independent games released for the Dreamcast this year, 2015.
That's crazy, isn't it?
And this isn't homebrew. This is like independent games, fully packaged, with a development team, printed discs. It's madness.
When did it get? It was like 2001. It got discontinued.
I think so. Yeah.
If you'd have said 15 years later, people will still be making games for it. Good thing as well is Sega. They don't give a shit. They're like,
Well, that's part of the reason people are making games for it, because people will actually buy these games, and they're saying a lot of the time they'll make the game for the Dreamcast independent, get the publicity, and then make PC versions. And
clever.
It will be kind of free publicity,
Yeah, it's interesting. See, the Dreamcast, I mean, it was obviously Sega's last entry into the console market. They've not made another one since. They're obviously just a software publishing house now.
Yeah, Team Sonic now, I think, mainly.
But to be fair, a lot of the recent Sega games have been pretty horrific, though, especially the Sonic entries. But Dreamcast 2, it's never going to happen, is it?
No, I don't think it is. I think if anything, you'd probably get a kind of fan-made project, but not professionally done on a mass scale. Or
even the amount of R&D and money, I mean, it costs millions.
Well, interestingly, you're saying this, but the Sega Mega Drive, they've just reported that they're actually selling Mega Drives, which is crazy, at Argos in the UK, and they're reporting that they've had a 400% surge. And these consoles, they're like, you can plug the cart in, your old carts, but you can also have a hard drive on it. It's got HDMI out, and it's only £50.
Yeah, and they've got the cart slot, so your original games can play in it as well.
Yeah.
Now, what this is, I'm looking at a picture of it here. It's a really small, about the size of like a mobile phone, a little bit chunkier though. And it basically is, It's got a couple of wireless controllers as well. This is kind of a new version of the Mega Drive, if you like.
Yeah, it's strange. These new consoles kind of appearing, like the Retron, which is one that you can play, with real hardware, all of your old carts on it.
But it says a 400% increase. Does it actually give you? They could have sold like 4 of them,
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
But I haven't actually played one of these. I did get the Atari Flashback.
Yeah.
That one. It's kind of got like a load of built-in games as well.
Well, they've also done the Spectrum, haven't they?
The
Vega one recently.
I think it was out because we're from the East Midlands. I think it was actually made here in Nottingham, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, which is pretty crazy.
It's weird, this emerging market of new consoles. It's strange. I think someone should maybe build an N64 with HDMI. That would be very successful.
So you can see all the blurriness really sharp. But actually, speaking of Sega, I had something really weird the other day that apparently they still sell the Sega Master System in Brazil.
What?
You can still buy
it's
still a massissive platform out there, and they still make games for it.
I'll have to ask my girlfriend about that. She's Brazilian.
Well, there you go.
I'll try to find out.
We get some new Master System games. There you are.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you mentioned a moment ago that there is that Retron console. What's this about Coleco coming back into the console market?
Yeah, I've not really looked at it, but Coleco Chameleon console has come. I think it's emerged from a Kickstarter. I think you know more about this than me.
What I think this is, I mean, it was a failed Kickstarter. It's basically, if you haven't seen the pictures of it, it's in the shell of an old Atari Jaguar.
Okay.
So they did a Kickstarter.
Well, that's not a nice shell to start with.
Well, did you hear the story of the Atari Jaguar shell afterwards? It was after Atari didn't care about it anymore and sold the rights off. It actually got made into a dental camera.
Okay.
So there are some white.
What like for above people's?
Well, yeah, they kind of have the case of the Jaguar was white, and then they've got an attachment with a camera on, on a lead. So there's a good chance if you go to your dentist, in certain parts of the world, you might see an Atari Jaguar on the wall.
Would you trust that?
Yeah, it's all right. I'll go somewhere else. Yeah. But yeah, there is actually a scene who, on eBay, you can actually buy these camera shells. And there are people that mod their original Atari Jaguars and have them in this bright white case.
Wow.
So, but basically this new console, it's an emulator.
Okay.
That's in an Atari Jaguar shell. However, it's not really got that.
So it's not hardware compatible, or is it?
No,
it's like a.
I think it plays various platforms.
Okay.
But it hasn't been getting that much good publicity.
I saw strangely that they said they were going to release 7 games for it. I'm looking forward to that. Let's see.
Well, I think it can play old stuff. It is like an emulator, basically, at heart. But it's people have just been saying that it's it's essentially just an emulator in a box. Why wouldn't you just get a Raspberry Pi or?
I guess they've just kind of slapped the branding on.
Yeah, well, and it was going for something like 200 quid or something, I think. So. You could buy a Raspberry Pi for 25 quid and put Retro Pi on. You've got
everything
you ever wanted, really. But something who is coming back into the retro gaming market is the High Street Shop Game.
Yeah, well, Game have actually put on their website for the first time. They're listing old school games on there. So it's kind of interesting. They're selling the Retron consoles and stuff, but they're only listing old games. And I think these are ones that they're getting as trade-ins in their stores, and they're kind of looking at the value and noticing it. But if you look at GameStop in America, they're doing an absolutely massive project, which is a full pilot scheme for GameStop, where they've actually, I've seen photos of it, they've got rooms with 50 guys sitting there, and they're all cleaning like NES carts. And it's like
get 30 years worth of crap off them.
Yeah, it's kind of like a factory. They've got this chain of, guys refurbishing carts. I don't know how it works out financially or anything.
But I mean, to be fair, you look at the prices at retro stuff, especially Nintendo stuff, goes for on eBay. It goes for an absolute fortune now. So, honestly, and you look at the way that gaming's going now, modern gaming, a lot of it's digital delivery, isn't it? So
and it keeps getting more expensive every year. So I think you're right with digital delivery. They're not going to have anything to put in the shop. It's just going to be full of amiibos.
Yeah, Nintendo games from 30 years ago. Yeah. But it is kind of cool. I mean, it's. I remember Game here in the UK, they're the main high street shop for buying video games.
Yep.
And they used to have they bought Game Station, didn't they? That was another one of their brands.
And they had Electronics Boutique.
Game Station used to sell retro games, though, didn't it?
Yeah, there was a little. I remember in the one in Nottingham, at least we had upstairs. There was a section that was just PS1 and
entire floor, wasn't it?
Yeah. But they're kind of retro, which is usually PS1, Nintendo. Kind of none of the other stuff that they can't make money from, basically.
You weren't getting a Commodore 64 in there or anything?
No. Whereas we've got an independent store in Nottingham called Playtime, and when in there, they had a full spectrum. They had everything, all the old systems.
What's the thing, if you want to buy retro consoles, it's generally, online, and the prices are massive. And there is, a few little independent shops that you'll find in a lot of places springing up now. But
I found shows are really good. It's a good tip. If you ever go to any kind of computer shows, take a lot of money because stuff is a lot cheaper than eBay.
Yeah, then you're always running around trying to find a cash point, aren't you?
Yeah, that's it.
But I mean, I think game entering the retro market, I don't know, is it a good thing or is it going to kind of tread on the toes of these small
I think it's like these, Tesco saying they want to stock vinyl.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this kind of, they see that there's something that's happening there, but they'll probably bankrupt everyone else if they do it, because they're such a big company.
Yeah, which might be a shame for the small guys, but on the plus side, it might also mean that the days of paying like 200 quid for an NES game might kind of go a bit.
I don't know. I don't think the value of stuff's going to go down. I think it's just going to keep going up.
Invest now.
The new antiques, yeah. Right.
Now, you mentioned before, we talked about the Amiga, which obviously, if, we've got YouTube channels that, mainly Amiga focused, and the Amiga was obviously a massive platform here in England, in Europe. So there is some good news on the Amiga scene over the last couple of weeks, though, that WHDLoad is now free.
Oh my God, this software is like, if they'd had this back in the day, people would not have left Amiga. You can install all your games on the hard drive.
Yeah.
No loading times. It's very nice.
Well, that's what it is essentially, isn't it? It's, because a lot of Amiga games, they were floppy disk only, and you couldn't put them on a hard disk, and it got to the stage where, do you remember like Monkey Island 2?
Yeah.
That was on like 12 discs or something?
Yeah. I think Rise of the Robots was around 14.
Yeah. So it wasn't worth the plastic it was printed on either. But yeah, with WHDLoad, rather than having all the floppy disks, you can basically install Amiga games onto a hard disk or a compact flash card that weren't originally designed to be hard disk installable. And before, I think, there was, it wasn't much though, was it, the license fee?
No, it was very small, but the main thing about WHDLoad as well is that it plays games from other Amiga systems. So you can have an Amiga 1200, which is AGA, and Advanced Graphics Architecture, and it will play the earlier games and the later ones without any compatibility issues, which always plagues.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You remember back then you'd have like degraded discs and all that reload kick and that kind of thing, wouldn't you? 'Cause you would whenever a new Amiga came out with a new version of the chipset. A lot of the old games would just fail, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
But WHDLoad, you can actually, downgrade your Amiga to be like an Amiga 500 or whatever. So, but it was a nice gift to the community to give it away for free.
Oh,
though.
Definitely, yeah. I think they should include that with the OS at the beginning.
Absolutely, yeah. So we'll obviously put, we'll have show notes for the podcast. We'll put all the links if you want to download it and find out a bit more about WHDLoad. But also, I mentioned the Amiga, but I did recently defect to the dark side.
I know. I wanted to chuck it out the window when you handed it to me.
I bought an Atari ST recently. Well, it was actually what got me interested in the ST. I mean, it's always kind of been the other side, I guess, hasn't it?
Yeah, it was the main rival to Amiga back then.
The Atari ST is interesting though, because we were at Retro Revival, the winter warmer, weren't we?
Yeah.
In Wolverhampton, and Ravi was playing on an Amiga 1200, and there's an Atari ST set up next to it.
Oh no, they had a Falcon as well.
They did,
which
yeah.
Which was the really high-end ST one.
That was the last one, wasn't it? The 030. But even, you look at those, they go for about 600 quid on eBay.
Oh, yeah.
To buy a Falcon. But I bought myself an Atari STE, which is, it's kind of like the AGA Amigas. It's got, more colours and the chipset's enhanced a bit. But yeah, I was playing with the ST at this Retro Revival show. And graphically, coming from someone who, grew up with the Amiga, the games look the same. The big difference you notice is the sound.
Yeah, the music's...
Awful.
Awful,
Well, I think the ST, it's got an off-the-shelf sound chip.
Yeah.
And I think it was actually the same one used in the Spectrum.
I think the Spectrum sound was a bit nicer. The Spectrum had a very different sound chip, I think.
I nearly bought an ST about a year ago. You might remember. We were at...
we were going to take the plunge.
Yeah, another gaming show, weren't we?
Yeah.
And I picked it up, had the money and all that, but then I think I was chatting to someone about how you get games onto it. Because it had, obviously we mentioned before, the Amiga's got WHD.
Yeah, we just thought, you could stick a compact flash drive in there and it would work fine.
It was a bit more complex than that, unfortunately. However, in the last 6 months or so, the Gotek drives. Yeah. So if you don't know what a Gotek is, it's basically a floppy disk emulator.
A USB one, so you can just stick a USB in.
But it's pin compatible with an old floppy drive, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you take your old floppy out, put the data and the power cable into the Gotek, download a load of disk images onto a USB stick, put it in the Gotek, and then, as far as the machine's concerned, it thinks it's playing off floppy disks. And you have a little track selector on the front, and you can load games into the virtual slots. However, the Gotek, it's been the HXC firmware.
Yeah, I've heard of this. This is it's kind of disk reading firmware.
Yeah, well, that
so.
was another kind of floppy emulator, but I think it was a bit more expensive. However, they've recently got that firmware to run on the Gotek.
Okay.
And there is a version of that firmware that runs on the Atari ST. So now you can use a Gotek with an ST.
Good timing for getting that done.
Yeah, well, I did. I bought one actually, yeah. So I've now got, all of my Atari ST games on a USB stick, 16 gig USB stick in there.
Nice.
All the games. But also, I've been looking around for expansions for the Atari ST, and there is something here. It's called the CosmosEX expansion. Now, I'll put a little picture of this and a link to the Facebook post that I found it, but I don't know if you got the link open, Ravi, but you look at this thing here.
Yeah, I'm just about to open it now.
Well, it goes in basically the same place that a Gotek would go in the floppy disk side panel on the Atari ST. And then it gives you, if you look here, we've got, there's Ethernet on there, a couple of USB ports. It also emulates floppy disks. There's an SD card reader in there as well. And also you can put in basically, this guy here has got a 6 gigabyte hard disk in it on an SD card.
That's crazy, because that's like, if you were to do this with Amiga, individual cards, you would be getting into the hundreds of pounds with the converters.
Even, you've got Ethernet and there, you've got USB, and that sells for 80 quid.
Wow.
So
I might get an ST.
Take the plunge.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'll put a link to the website where you can buy this from. But it's just a guy who makes these. But I think that expansion is really cool and definitely on my shopping list this year, I think. There has actually been some really interesting hardware developments in the Amiga world as well, though. Have you heard about the Vampire 2?
I have heard about the Vampire 2, and it's blown my mind.
Tell us about it then, if people might not be familiar with what it is.
The Vampire 2 is a FPGA, which is a
Fully programmable gate array?
Gate array, I think that's the one. Which is basically a hardware board that you can tell to pretend to be like hardware, but it works better than a software emulator because it's in hardware. And this is one that you can just basically stick on top of your 600's 020.
68K, I think, isn't it?
68K, and it makes it, I think it was around 10 times or 20 times faster.
Yeah, they're getting like 80 megahertz or something like speed.
It's absolutely flying. Like, I've not seen a machine fly like that before, an Amiga.
Oh, this is, the Amiga 600 as well, which is bottom of the range Amiga, isn't it? The small, the one that's really had a bit of a bad rep, to be fair. It was, I interviewed David Pleasance from Commodore last year. I've got an interview on YouTube. And even he admitted that the Amiga 600 was a total and utter flop and a disaster.
Yeah, they even used cheap capacitors in it and stuff. It wasn't that good. But this card really makes it go fast.
It makes it the most powerful Amiga, essentially, doesn't it?
The most powerful Amiga ever. People are playing like Quake on 600s.
While playing an MP3 and everything,
yeah.
But I was reading as well, there's, obviously this is a programmable chip, so like you mentioned, you can basically, you just flash the chip with whatever firmware you want on there or what a kind of emulated CPU. But they even reckon they can bring like the AGA chipset to the Amiga 600.
Yeah, I saw about that as well. That's
crazy.
That's absolutely mad. I think it's because you can basically add in additional things. So, things that didn't exist in the architecture, you can just program them in and it will address your machine. It's really insane.
But I mean, I think there is talk of them making one for the Amiga 1200, which obviously seems like the logical platform to do it
Throw
on.
your PowerPC cards in the bin, guys.
The Amiga scene did kind of go down the PowerPC route, and they still do continue with that. You and I both run MorphOS, and it's cool and all that. But I think this.
Well, if this is compatible, they could put it on an Atari. They could put it on an Acorn. They could maybe use it on many old machines, because another crazy thing that I saw, which was Sonic PowerPC cards. Recently, there's another really good podcast, which is called Amicast.
Yeah.
And that's amigapodcast.com, English and Polish one. And they've just been talking to a guy. He's made the PowerPC Sonic cards, which were made for the Mac years ago, work with the 4000 now.
I did read about that.
And he's actually wrote a driver for it. So now they're suddenly going to become a new powerful item as well.
Well, they were going on like eBay for like £5 or something, weren't they? They were.
I think there was some £13 last year or something.
But PowerPC accelerators for the classic Amigas, are they like £2,000? I've seen them go for on eBay and stuff.
Oh god, yeah, it gets crazy. But I think this is good because it can be used on multiple machines. Maybe like we had a thing called the Minimig, which was a programmable board But you could also put an Atari core in there. You could, have any kind of machine you wanted.
See, to me, as someone, I think what excites me most about this as well, I mean, I've actually bought one of the Vampire 2s. I ordered it the other day off Kipper. Yeah, so should be coming in the next few weeks. I'll do a YouTube video on it when I get it.
I've got to come round and play it.
Yeah, my Amiga 4000 might get put away and my 600 back set up again. But I think for me, it's the fact that, I'm not a big emulation guy, but I think because you're using the original hardware, it doesn't feel like emulation. It just feels like you've got a beefy accelerator card in there, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's also good to have it in that original case and just running that absolute crazy speed.
What's your view on emulation? Do you emulate machines at all?
The only kind of machines that I tend to emulate are stuff that's all been around, like, Mega Drive and stuff that if I got all the carts for it, it'd be an absolute hell. But no, I don't really. I like having the old hardware. And Dan, you've converted me to using CRTs as well. So
yeah, well, that was really exciting. I used LCD screens on my old school systems for a while, but it was when my friend came to visit me. It was like a friend I used to go to school with, and like he came, it was about 3 or 4 years ago now. He came to stay with me for a couple of days while my girlfriend was away, and we're drinking Jack Daniels, and he said, put the Amiga on. He's like, I can't believe you still got one. And we were playing that cannon fodder like we used to when we were a kid. And he goes, I don't remember the graphics looking this bad. And I thought, is it just kind of, rose-tinted glasses? Looking back, you always think it's better than it actually was. But then I thought, it actually looks really quite blocky, doesn't it? And it was quite hard to differentiate, the characters from the background and everything. And then I gone back to my folks, and I still have my old Philips CM88332 monitor.
Yeah, the classic.
Little 14-inch CRT. And I thought, I'll bring that back down, set it up. And it blew me away when I set it up again. I was like, this is how I remember the games looking.
Talking of the updating of games as well, another thing that I think we'll be covering in the podcast is a load of remakes, because they're going on at the moment. And a lot of games are getting remakes, like the successful Tomb Raider one recently, which is great, play it. And they've just announced the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which everyone's looking forward to. It's going to be split up into episodes. So the original one, I remember it was on, I think, 4 discs on the PlayStation. It was only split up into discs. This will be split up into episodes. So
these were CD-ROMs, weren't they?
Yeah, so people hoping to play it all the way through for the first time. I don't think that's going to happen.
And you'll have to buy it like 4 times, and each instalment will no doubt be charged.
Oh, God, yeah. That's that. I never thought of that.
But so what platforms are they bringing it out on then? Is it going to be modern consoles?
That's all modern consoles, and it'll probably arrive for the PC about 2 years later. That'll be.
So I remember some of them were exclusive PlayStation titles for a bit, weren't they?
Yeah. I think they had this weird exclusivity thing. They used to do it with GTA as well, where they'd, release it for a few months. But then that kind of stopped. I think it got shorter and shorter, and then they were like, oh, we're going to release GTA for the Xbox for 2 months. Yeah. And then, everyone else could have it after 2 months.
So that is annoying, isn't it, when company... I mean, they do it with, Call of Duty's obviously a bit kind of passé now. No, I think the sales for Call of Duty have been a bit lower in the last couple of years. But even with that, I remember a few years ago when it was at its peak, you'd always get the DLC for the Xbox about 6 months before the PS3. It'd be like...
Well, that's it. And I think it's always a case of the consoles are first as well, because PC development just takes more time, because people have more weird hardware in there that they've got to support, rather than a standard console setup.
Well, I think now it makes it a bit easier as well that the current consoles are obviously architecturally PCs, aren't they? They run x86 processors and stuff, so... I think,
apart from the Wii that's on ARM.
Well, from what I've heard about the Wii U, it's essentially on death's door anyway, isn't it, at the moment?
Well, that's an interesting thing to talk about, actually, because Nintendo are changing their strategy, I think. Before, they had the strategy of casual gamers and aiming for that. And they did fantastically with the Wii. And now the market's been fully taken by mobile games and... tablets, and they've actually said that they're going to start doing mobile games now.
And they've got this new console, the NX, as well.
The NX,
which is going to be their next platform.
It's very interesting because they're moving from the kind of area of, casual gaming to collecting and, with the amiibos, and you being able to, if you don't know what an amiibo is, it's a little figure that you could stick on your DS, and it kind of sounds rubbish initially, but they're actually amazingly popular. And it's like these kind of side projects and merchandising that they're actually making the money on, not the main consoles. I don't know about the NX. Have you heard anything about it?
I've heard a few rumours about it, but I heard it's apparently it's going to have a touchscreen. So,
Okay.
But it's not. Maybe the controller's going to be a bit like the Wii U one with the touchscreen.
Did you see the patent thing that they had?
No, what was that?
Okay, so there's this design of a handheld kind of controller, like a PS1 style controller, but all the edges of it, the screen goes all the way up to the edge.
Right, okay.
And it's displayed on it.
On the controller?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, floating graphics. It's very weird.
You know what, though? I find with Nintendo, they kind of sometimes are a bit too gimmicky for their own good. With stuff like that, I mean, at its
Virtual
core...
Boy. Virtual Boy.
Yeah, it's like, if you look back, though, like the Nintendo consoles that, close to our heart, like the NES and the Super Nintendo, they were just simple games consoles. Didn't have any gimmicky controllers or anything like that. I mean, I know the Wii was obviously their most successful console, but who bought the Wii? Like, my grandma had one, and she did bowling on it. Now it's been in the cupboard for like 7 years, you know what I mean? It's not a market that they can... I don't even think that market's there anymore. The motion thing happened for a bit, didn't it?
Yeah.
And that's kind of over now. And I think, casuals, they play Facebook games and mobile games, don't they?
Well, that's the thing, casual gaming, that's your person sitting there tapping on a Candy Crush, and your person on a tablet. And by Nintendo saying they refuse to do any mobile games, they kind of knocked themselves out of that market totally. So they've had to do a bit of a U-turn and say, actually, we are going to do them, but we're going to do them the Nintendo way and really well.
But I think the minute you can get stuff like, Mario and that kind of thing on an iPhone, surely that's got to kill, like, the sales of the 3DS stone dead, you'd think.
Well, if you just look now, I've just linked to the touchscreen gamepad, and it should be very interesting.
It's on a Wired
they've
magazine.
Just done for the NX, yeah.
But yeah, the NX, I was reading about the NX the other day, though, and apparently there's been a lot of rumours about it. Someone actually said on Twitter, I can't remember the guy's name now, but he's quite a respected games journalist, and he said that he knows that it's not going to be as powerful even as a PS4 or the Xbox One.
I don't think it needs to be, though. I don't think they're not aiming for that ultra realistic kind of top end first person shooter Fallout 4. They're gonna have Mario Kart and
why not just keep the Wii U going though, or change it somehow? In that case,
I think it's strange with the Wii U because people didn't know if it was a new console or if it was an actual upgrade to the Wii.
That's the name's fault, isn't it?
Yeah.
Their biggest mistake was calling it Wii U.
Yeah.
Even my brother, my brother's pretty hardcore into Xbox and PlayStation, but when I got one, I got a Wii U, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not interested in the motion controls." I was like, "No, it's not that." He said, "Oh, I thought it was just like a tablet for the Wii or something."
It's like, no, it's a brand new console,
And if my brother didn't know, and he's really into video games, you know what I mean? Like, what chance has the average person got?
That's it.
But because I've got a Wii U, and I think it's a great machine.
Yeah, no, I've had a play, and it seems really nice.
Recently I've been playing Yoshi's Woolly World, which is a game for like 7-year-olds, but literally it's one of the hardest video games when you get into it. I nearly threw my controller through the TV yesterday.
I'd like to see Jonathan Ross pronounce that.
Yoshi Woolly World.
Yeah.
But also there's another game I've been playing on the Wii U, Project X, Maiden of Blackwater, it's called. It's kind of like a Japanese horror game.
Okay.
But yeah, it actually, what you do in this game though, you take pictures of ghosts to see them, and you use the Wii U control pad. You look through it, and it's like the viewfinder on your camera. So it works well in that respect, but there are not really many games that utilise the touchpad to its full potential. But
no, it sounds like you're kind of Dreamcast fishing.
It is. Yeah, it's like
ghost thing.
But yeah, it's kind of, what I'd really like to see from Nintendo. I'd like them to go for the hardcore gaming market again, and just come out with a system that's a simple machine. Plays good games, get their first-party titles on there. It'd be nice to see them just trying to compete again,
Well, interestingly, I'm just reading an article here, actually, which says the 3DS and Wii U outsold the PS4 during Christmas in Japan.
Oh, interesting.
So maybe they're gaining a pace in Japan, and the 3DS is definitely gaining ground, because I know a hell of a lot of people that are buying it.
It surprises me how popular the 3DS has been. I've got one.
I tried it. Yeah. I had not tried one the other day. I tried the 3D on it, and it's really cool, actually.
Yeah. Gives you a bit of a headache after a while. Yeah. Quite low, but
because it tracks your eyes, doesn't it?
But you'd think with people, every kid having if they haven't got a phone, they've got like an iPod Touch or something. It does surprise me how popular Nintendo's handhelds are. But
they're saying here the new 3DS was 150,000, and the Wii U was 101.
Okay.
The PS Vita was 66,000.
That's been a disaster, though, hasn't it? The Vita.
And the PS4 was only 60
Oh, interesting.
in Japan.
Indeed,
So
yeah.
it's
a weird
Japan's
market.
usually the teller of the future, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, from everything, the NX is probably going to be out maybe, they're estimating like early 2017, so maybe about a year. So really the Wii U's only got maybe 12 months left in it, but I think, it's a good console. It's just, it has been Nintendo's biggest flop since the Virtua Boy.
Yeah, totally. But, they had to pull themselves out from kind of after the GameCube. They could have flopped then, but they luckily found this casual gaming direction and chose to go in that way. So I think they need to make a strong decision again and go for a complete direction. And look, we're from the what's it called? We're from the European perspective, and we're now talking about Nintendo again. So it's
yeah, what we were saying before about the NES.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking as like someone who grew up in England, I knew like one guy who had an NES.
All the rich boys had SNESes when we were kids.
Yeah. My friend Martin had a Super Nintendo. But I mean, for me, like most of my friends, it was like Commodore 64s and then Amigas and stuff like that.
My first machine was the 2800, and then
Atari.
Yeah, and then a big fat dirty Amstrad.
Well, the CPC 464, that thing, was it?
I think so.
Was it a PC? One of the
green and
PCs?
black, and my
God,
mum had
yeah,
WordPerfect on it, and I played Missile Command and Rampage.
My auntie had one that used 3-inch floppy disks.
3-inch?
Yeah, they're kind of like, they're rigid, they're kind of quite hard.
Oh, they sound
Yeah,
cool.
so, but there was actually a guy the other day looking for some, and apparently can't find them anywhere now. 3-inch discs, they're like really rare apparently, so...
I never knew they even existed.
So if you've got an old... I think it was only really Amstrad and maybe Sinclair used them. Obviously, Sinclair and Amstrad became the same company eventually, but I don't think they were really that, 3-inch discs were used all that widespread. But if you've got an old Amstrad in the attic, have a little root around, those 3-inch discs might be valuable now.
Well, I remember getting tapes when I was a kid for the Atari and putting them in the tape player to see if they work.
Well, interesting. I kind of... I've been to my mum's and cleaning out some of my old stuff from the attic. I found a box of old cassette tapes. Nice. So I've been actually digitizing all the audio and stuff off them. But I found an old cassette tape of a game that I made when I was 8 years old on the Commodore Plus 4.
Excellent.
So I haven't got the Plus 4 set up at the moment, but I put it in an audio recorder to listen, make sure I hadn't taped over it or anything. But I got the old, so obviously there's some data on there, so... Might be quite interesting.
Data on tape.
A blockbuster game in the making.
The hidden one. And talking of blockbuster games, actually, we have a friend called Steve, and he's doing a project called Eternal Psygnosis.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, and what's basically happened is his friend, Mike, was the original managing director of Psygnosis, found all these old discs, 800 of them, and gave them along to Steve. He was kind of looking through them, archiving them, and he's found a Star Wars game that was meant to be released by Psygnosis.
It's an Amiga game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it was in 94, so we can put some links on that, and we might have them on a later show as well.
Yeah, well, I've been, obviously we will hopefully have Steve on in the next few weeks, but he released some just before Christmas, like the Beast Pack. Yeah. I remember that, and I downloaded, and that's got like, the Shadow of the Beast graphics, and you can load the IFF files up into D-Paint. And
I haven't downloaded it.
Yeah, you've got to get
downloaded.
That. Yeah, I think he'd done like there's about 7 discs that he'd done at first, and he kind of released them as a little zip file. But yeah, it's fascinating, because obviously Psygnosis, who were one of the biggest publishing houses back in the early 90s.
Oh, they were massive, even with the PlayStation when they first came on, with Destruction Derby and games like that.
But it's, just charting the history of such an iconic company and like having an insight into how those classic games were made. It's
this stuff's going to get lost.
Exactly.
You need to preserve it for history.
Exactly. Now, I mentioned before about the Atari ST. I was reading something quite interesting the other day that obviously, speaking as guys who ran Amigas back in the day, obviously the ST's operating system was always a bit of a joke.
TOS, wasn't it called? That's really the worst
operating
name.
System, TOS. I remember it. I think like some Amiga magazine, I think it was Amiga Power or something, used to always call like Atari ST users TOSers, with the capitalized TOS. But I was reading something the other day that apparently it nearly ran a proper Unix operating system.
Okay.
Yeah, apparently this was made for it, but at the last minute, obviously Jack Trammell ran Atari, and he was a notorious skinflint, wasn't he? Very tight with his money, and he didn't want to pay for it in the end. So they basically, used the operating system in the end. But it could have been a proper hardcore hackers machine with that.
So they could have, with the Falcon, they could have even gone further and,
Yeah, it could have
got
been like
modern graphics cards in there, and
you use like Unix on servers and all that, so it could have definitely it could have been used in a professional environment rather than what the ST actually was. So,
well, talking of strange OSs on things, going back to Nintendo, we've noticed that they've just some guys put a video. I don't know how you know what the article headlines are like, but he's run Windows 95 on a 3DS, which is
in dual screen as well.
But it only shows the boot screen on the actual YouTube video, so we don't know how far he's got. But people are hooting about this on the internet.
It's I don't even know what architecture the 3DS runs on, to be honest. Is it a standard
think
PC?
It's ARM.
Or is it? Yeah, that's a big job then if he's ported it as well. Could have maybe put his efforts into something a little bit more worthwhile, but
Yeah,
Windows 95.
there's some strange things. Like I saw people were porting to oscilloscopes, Doom.
Yeah, they do say that everything's got a port of Doom, so you'll be running it on your toaster in a couple of years, no doubt. But yeah, we'll obviously we'll pop the link to the video in the audio podcast show notes if you want to check that out. And we've also got quite a fascinating interview coming up as well with Allister Brimble.
Yes, Allister Brimble, the guy from Team 17, you may remember.
But
Roller Coaster Tycoon driver.
He's a lovely guy, Alistair. We actually met him last year in Amsterdam, didn't we, at the Amiga's 30th anniversary at the
party.
Yeah, so he was there in I remember his bright blue suit.
Yeah, and I think we spent some time at the airport as well.
We did, yeah.
We had
went for a coffee and a bit of pasta with him, didn't we? Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, lovely guy. And we've actually got a fascinating 15 or 20-minute interview coming up with Allister Brimble.
Yeah, and if you're also looking for other podcasts, there's a really good new one called Amigos Podcast, which is about everything Amiga. And this is from the US perspective, which is very interesting because in the US they didn't have any Amigas. So it's completely the opposite to the whole retro scene style. And Remotely Interested Podcast, which is a guy who does Amiga content, but he also does lots of stuff about technology. So he's recent ones about a guy who's going around scanning buildings and then recreating it in 3D with lasers. So, there's some really cool
Anything
stuff
involving lasers is cool, though, isn't it? And did you have one more podcast to mention?
Yeah, and that's the Amicast. All these will be provided in the notes, but Amicast is an English and Polish Amiga cast.
You've been checking out the Retro Hour. You can get the show every week on iTunes and on SoundCloud, and of course from the website theretrohour.com. And we'll leave you now with this fascinating interview with Allister Brimble, and we'll catch you next week.
Bye.
So, Alistair, we'll start by asking, how did you first get involved in making video game music?
Well, I guess my dad was fairly musical. I was really into computers and pretty amazed by some of the music they were creating at the time. I think there was a game called Glider Rider that David Whittaker did a soundtrack for that really inspired me. And of course, like everybody, I moved on to the Amiga, managed to get some software to allow me to compose my own tunes, and I sent one of them off to a software company called 17-Bit Software. It's actually a public domain company. I guess there's quite a few people listening who might not even know what the public domain software company is. I guess it's like today you might show something on YouTube. You might show your music or your graphics on YouTube. Well, it's kind of the same thing, but they put it on a disc and they distributed it for the price of the disc. And so I sent something off to them and they loved what I did. I think I did a Jean-Michel Jarre Rendezvous remix.
Oh, nice.
Anyway, I sent this tune off, not thinking anything would come of it, and I'm kind of amazed to get a reply back saying they like what I did. And I think 17-Bit, they later turned into Team 17, and of course they did Alien Breed and Project X, and I was chosen to do those games, and it sort of went on from there.
Before the Amiga, were you involved in the Commodore 64 music scene as well, weren't you?
Actually, strangely, after the Amiga.
Okay.
So I did some Amiga projects for Codemaster software. I think it was a game called Nitro Boost Challenge, and then a football game which came out a couple of years later called Italia 1990. And after that, then they asked me to do some music for the Spectrum and the Commodore 64 because they were at the end of their life. So it was kind of a backward step, but it was really nice to be able to do some of the stuff that my sort of childhood heroes would be doing, like Rob Hubbard and David Whittaker on those 8-bit machines.
What did you think of the SID chip?
SID chip's awesome. It still is today. I've just done a project with it, actually, which is called Sidology 2. Remixes of Jean-Michel Jarre done with the SID chip.
Oh, wow.
And I've used something like 4 or 5 SIDs at once. It's a SID emulator made by Mike Clark that runs on Cubase, and it's 100% realistic. So yeah, I've been having fun with that. But yeah, you've just got so much expression with the SID chip that you don't get later on the Amiga. You kind of have to push it quite hard to get any expression from a sample. But yeah, you had it all with the 64. You couldn't have the samples. It was just very rich, flowing sound.
What software did you use to make music on the 64 then? Was it all just like machine code or BASIC, or was it like trackers for it?
I had some software where I could type the notes in one at a time, and that was given to me by another composer called Wally Beeban. Later on, a friend called Michael Delaney, who's really good at writing sound drivers, made me a proper tracker program that would run on an Amiga. Yeah, then I could plug it into the, I think you managed to get onto a Commodore 64 disc and get it into the 64 like that.
On a 5 1/4 inch floppy, was it?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Old school.
One of the old big ones.
Going on to the Amiga, what was your setup then that you used to use originally?
Originally, the good thing about the Amiga was you could just do it with an Amiga. You didn't need anything else. So I had an Amiga, and I had Aegis Sonics, which was a nice software package where you could do samples and almost Commodore 64 like synth leads and stuff on it. And then later on I moved, well, not much later on, a few months later I probably moved to Soundtracker, like a lot of people. And then you got all that amazing sample manipulation you do real time.
So, Alistair, I knew you were doing lots of stuff later on after the Amiga. Did you use the Amiga at all to kind of work with them? Or any Amiga software for the PlayStation tunes? Or?
For PlayStation, I think I was on Fast Tracker on the PC. But before that, I did quite a bit of music for the Super Nintendo. There's a game called Lawnmower Man that did.
Yeah, I remember that. That's got a really good soundtrack, actually.
Yeah, thanks. And I used David Whittaker's sound driver on that, but you had to type the notes in one at a time to that in an assembler. So what I did is I used a program on the Amiga called Delta Music, which is another tracker type thing. But it's really good in that all the channels are separate. You know, on a tracker, they're linked together, all 4 channels. So you can't change them independently, really.
I remember a thing around the time. Everybody, kind of big musicians in the Amiga scene, used to have their own sound format. So I remember there was a special David Whittaker sound format. Did you have an Allister Brimble one?
No, I didn't. I used well, actually, sort of. I started using a program called Soundmon, which was by a guy called Brian Posmer. Who's brilliant at writing tracker sort of programs. And that allowed me to do Alien Breed. Actually, by the way, I couldn't have done Alien Breed on a tracker because it would have taken too much memory, because each of those patterns takes several K of memory. You probably know better than me. It's probably 1K a pattern or something like that. But on Soundmon, I could have the 4 channels independent, so I could construct it like a jigsaw. But yeah, he actually found out that I used his Soundmon on Alien Breed. So I said to him, well, I really probably should have paid you a little bit for that. So I paid him £100. In return, he actually wrote me Soundmon 2.0, which had loads of extra features in that only I could use.
So essentially, you just paid for a private upgrade.
£100, not bad, is it?
Yeah,
yeah, I know. Yeah, I was quite pleased with that. And you could do quite interesting stuff, like you could set a vibrato going and it would continue going through all the other instruments that you played after it. That's what David Whittaker used to do on the Commodore 64, especially on its bass lines. And the vibrato used to continue. And I just couldn't do that on a normal tracker because it would kind of keep resetting. So, yeah.
Would that be the kind of to play 3 notes at the same time? I remember there was a trick that David Whittaker did, or there was some timing trick where you could play 3 notes at the same time. I think it was on the Spectrum. Yeah,
on the Spectrum Beeper, he came up with something where you could mix channels together. And I think later on, Tim Follin did something. He did like 5 or 6 channels at once.
Well, you mentioned before about, fitting music into memory. Did you ever find any limitations? Would like a software publisher say you've got like a certain amount of space on the disc for the music?
So yeah, on the on the Spectrum and stuff, you like had 3K of memory. So yeah, the biggest problem wasn't the sounds; it was the note data itself, and you had to really compress that down. So instead of like on a tracker, you've got like 64 length patterns, you had 16 or 8 length patterns, and you had to sequence them very, very efficiently to get the most out of it. And then I guess when you get to the Amiga, you'd have 40 or 50K of memory to play with. I remember when I did the full Alien Breed tune, it came out at 80K, and it was too big for the game, so I had to cut that down.
Was that heartbreaking, was it, having to like cut your projects down then?
It was, but the one everybody heard, they seemed to really like. So, because what I did is I took away the samples and I replaced them with single cycle waveforms, just tiny waveforms, like a vocal waveform, and added some vibrato. And it seemed to work in context with the tune. So yeah, it didn't end up too badly, that one.
But you also worked on the Mortal Kombat series as well, which obviously was massive. How did you get involved with that?
Yeah, Mortal Kombat. That was Probe Software. But yeah, I think they just phoned me up or got in contact via Martin Brown at Team 17, perhaps, and got me over to see the arcade machine. Now the problem I had was, the title tune was easy enough because I could get that into 4 channels. But in game they wanted 3 channels for sound effects, and that only left me 1 channel for the music.
Wow!
So I had to use a little trick that Jerome Tell from Maniacs of Noise had used a few years before on the Commodore 64, and get like a kick and a snare and a bass all out of 1 channel, and a little bit of melody as well, I seem to remember.
So you could have the toasty.
It was a very sound effect heavy game, wasn't it, as well? Yeah,
it was. Yeah.
When you first saw the arcade of Mortal Kombat, did you have any idea how big it was going to be, or did it make an impression on you at all?
Yeah. It was it was a totally different game to anything I'd seen. I hadn't really seen much, and especially all the vocals, that's what really stood out, I think. All those special like kill moves and stuff you can do.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a game that brought in the age rating for video games, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Although I remember that, all those blood and guts, and absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
Looks primitive today, but yeah, it was shocking stuff back then.
Also, how did you feel about Driver when you first did that? Because I listened to your soundtrack and it's absolutely fabulous. It's like 1970s, kind of cop movie. Did you feel it would be as successful when you first started?
No, I had no clue. I realised who Reflections were like halfway through the project. Oh yeah, shit, they did all that stuff on the Amiga as well. And so I did that. I did the music on a PC with Fast Tracker in 8 channels. But when it got into the game, a lot of people don't realise it's not playing properly.
Okay.
So it's missing notes all over the place. There was some timing issue. So you're kind of hearing half the music. On the second version, Driver 2, it plays correctly.
That's really odd, because lots of people say that, the Driver soundtrack's one of the best on the PlayStation 1. So the fact that it's not fully there is quite interesting.
It is, yeah. Also, I'm not sure, but I think quite a few people have confused the PlayStation one with the PC one, which had different music. Yeah. But I didn't actually do the PC stuff. They were kind of full CD tracks.
I imagine a lot of the time you wrote music for a game, obviously before the game was finished. Was there any occasions where you did a soundtrack and then the game was disappointing after?
I think you tend to know when the game's going to be good just by who's making them. So, like, if you're doing a Reflections game, you know it's going to be good. Yeah, these days that's more common. I'll do, a really big, expensive sounding soundtrack, and then the game's absolutely rubbish on, iPad. It's like for 3-year-olds or something like that. Yeah, that can be a bit disappointing. But in the Amiga days, I think generally the games were pretty good. Yeah. What
do you say is your favourite and least favourite formats that you've worked on?
It's hard to compare, really, isn't it? Because they all had something special. But I think that the biggest jump forwards was the Super Nintendo at the time. You could have like 8 channels of music, well, probably 6 music and 2 sound effects, and you could do so much more with it. And it even had its own sound chip just for processing sounds. So you could do DSP effects and stuff like that.
Nice.
So Super Nintendo probably stood out the most.
Now, recently you brought an album called the Amiga Works.
Yeah, Amiga Works. So I've been asked over the years to make remixes of my tunes, and actually a guy called Chris Hulsbeck, that everyone will know, did a project first called Turrican Anthology, and I saw how well he'd done on that, remaking his Turrican tunes, and he'd got a lot of backers. So I thought, well, let's copy it, basically.
He even released that on vinyl, didn't he?
Was it vinyl? Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I thought I talked to Chris, and I just asked him how easy it was to do, and he sort of explained how to use Kickstarter and stuff. I put mine up there, not expecting too much, and people seem to want it. Yeah, Kickstarter's great. If people don't want it, they tell you by not pledging, and then you don't have to do the project. So. So that was it, and I remade all my tracks from the ground up. I tried to keep the essence of the originals. So sometimes I'd do something that was like too good. I'd have to go back to the Amiga and hear how everything was exactly on the beat and try and copy that, rather than put any swing or anything on the tracks, and try and make the sounds as simple as the Amiga ones, but then kind of make it modern and easy to listen to on your hi-fi speakers.
So they weren't too polished?
Sometimes they were polished, but sometimes I added too many new sounds, I think, and then you detract from what the original was. And you've got to remember that it's people's memories you're playing with, so they've got to remember the original and realise it's the original, as well as it sounding good.
And there's a documentary being made about you.
Oh yeah, this is I think it's Paul Bridger.
Yes.
One of my, he's kind of the original guy that bought my first CD, which was Sounds Digital, which was advertised in the box for Project X, and he's always bought all my stuff ever since. And then he got the on Kickstarter, he got the executive producer credit on the Amiga Works, and so he's decided to make this documentary. I don't know what's in it at all. I haven't seen anything of it yet. So
that must be quite an honour, though, having a documentary made about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
So what projects are you currently working on then, Alistair?
I've got a big indie project coming up soon with an Australian developer. It's like a big adventure game. Also, I'm working on a game. I'm not sure if I can say. Do you remember I did a game called Train Fever recently? Well, there might be something along those lines. Yeah, if you have a look at that, Train Fever online, it's done really well. So there's more to come of that sort of thing. And other than that, it's a few little iPad projects. And we're doing a lot of, me and my partner, Anthony Purtson, we're doing a lot of virtual reality games at the moment.
Oh, wow.
They're not really games, stuff like presentations for BP, where they're putting a headset on, an Oculus Rift headset, and we're having to do a 3D soundtrack for it. They'll be used as like a presentation in a big hall.
Virtual reality is very exciting this time round, though, isn't it? I think the technology's finally there.
Yes, I think, in fact, I don't know if you saw it, but I saw the first version of virtual reality on the Amiga, the Trocadero in London, and they had 3 Amigas running it.
Oh, the virtuality one.
Yeah, that was it. Amiga 3000s, weren't they?
That's right, it was one for each dimension. It was absolutely brilliant. And I thought, wow, this is the way forward. And then nothing happened.
I remember there was kind of seizure warnings as well at some point. There was
very
a weird...
low frame rate, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was, yeah. But it was still amazing the way you could look around you, even behind you and stuff like that. And I've thought ever since that it would be the next big thing. And now finally it looks like it will be.
It only took 25 years.
I just want to say, if you want to check out Alistair's website, it's orchestralmedia.co.uk. And that's where you'll find information about kind of Train Fever and all his recent projects. And then just search the Amiga Works if you're looking for his new remade album.
And we'll look forward to the documentary as well.
Yep, I'm looking forward to that.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Alistair.
Thanks a lot then.